Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast sponsored by Teradata and titled 6 Tenets of a Successful Customer Engagement Strategy. We here at the AMA provide you with this webcast as one of the many special programs offered to the marketing community, and we invite you to participate in this ongoing series of free web seminars to help you drive the greatest return on your marketing investments. These informative thought leader webcasts feature some of the most expert minds in marketing, and you can see the full list of upcoming webcasts by going to ama.org/webcast. And just a few quick housekeeping items before starting today. We are recording the full presentation, and it will be made available to you soon after, so look for that coming your way. If you have any questions as the presentation goes on, please use the chat feature that you see to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area as well, and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. And content-related questions, we do encourage you to enter those as the presentation goes on, and we'll be addressing those at the end of the formal presentation. And if you're able to join us today on Twitter, we would love to have you engage with us at #engagement. So again, please feel free to send out some live tweets as the presentation goes on today. Also do want to point out that after today's content presentation, we will have a short demonstration of the Teradata product. So we'll move into that and then be taking questions after the demonstration. So again, please be sure to stick around for the full presentation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. We're being joined by Christian Bailey, who is the Director of Strategy with Anvil Media, and Mark Schroeder, who is the Marketing Director with Teradata. And so Christian and Mark have a lot of great insights and information they're going to be sharing with you today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christian, who is going to start today's presentation.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you everyone for joining us. So this presentation is basically a very broad presentation around how to really craft a successful customer engagement strategy. And then we'll definitely add a lot of depth in the different areas with specific examples. But I just want to make sure at the end of this, if we have any questions, we'll allow some time for that. And then I'm excited to have Teradata involved because I think they also have some really relevant case studies that are hitting right on the money in this area of expertise. So that being said, just to give you a little bit of background about myself and why I was excited to participate in this topic when the AMA approached me. I have about a 20-year marketing background, but I started in kind of the traditional marketing side of things. So I was a brand strategist for a number of years, then dove in deeply into the digital world, became director of digital media at a couple of different companies. And that's really where I see the segue of a lot of this customer engagement really meeting in the digital space right now. And then currently I'm the Director of Strategy for Anvil Media. So I've had a chance to be on the front lines of experiential initiatives, digital initiatives for clients like Sonos, Google, YouTube, Nike, et cetera. So I'm excited to bring some of that expertise into kind of where I see some of the important areas to focus on. And I want to make this a very actionable talk so that we're not just talking in theory, but you walk away with some specific starting points if you don't have an engagement strategy in your organization, or some points to revisit into your current strategy if you're already engaged in some of these tactics and strategies. So for me, just to give you an overview of the presentation, when I talk about customer engagement with people, to me it's about a programmatic approach to creating interaction. And that interaction can span a number of different directions. It starts with the customer and interacting with the brand, but all of the other stakeholders can become involved. We can look at these strategies and extend them out to prospects that haven't yet engaged a company. And it's really about creating two-way interaction with the brand. And when we talk about the idea of engagement, sometimes it's good to look at this as a very long tail discussion and strategy, because in my opinion, successful customer engagement strategies put a lot of the metrics that we're in touch with as marketers, the idea of conversions and direct response and driving sales, into a much longer term strategic context. In fact, sometimes when you're looking at some of your short-term strategies, they actually fall counter to a longer-term context. You might be very aggressively trying to drive conversions amongst your customer and actually hurting your brand over the long term in terms of the satisfaction scores that customers are going to start to rate you by. So with any programmatic approach that we're looking at, the idea is you use careful planning to develop those programs and strategies, and you use data to inform. And when you do that properly, it's not only going to increase the likelihood of success, but it's going to mitigate the risks associated with not doing it or doing it poorly. So in my opinion, customer engagement's not a if or should we do this strategy. It's we have to do this, because if we don't, the risks of not doing it effectively far outweigh the successes that you can see with a successful program. And so if we are doing it properly, the engagement strategy should translate into significant bottom line returns for companies over time. So for me, that's where I'd like to kind of focus and kind of frame the conversation a little bit. And to me, if there's one takeaway, it's all about putting that customer in the center and starting off with the viewpoint of listen to me. If you're listening to your customer, they'll engage. If you're telling your customer what you want them to hear, you're not fostering that two-way conversation that makes for a successful engagement program. If I look at just kind of a straight definition, and I pulled this off of Wikipedia, but I thought it was appropriate, it's the idea of engagement of customers with one another. So again, sometimes the company's not part of that direct conversation. It's the customers talking amongst themselves, the customers talking with a company or brand, and that the initiatives for engagement can either be consumer-led or company-led, and the medium of engagement can be both online or offline. And oftentimes the successful programs are looking to integrate the real world and digital wherever they can. So we talked about the idea of using these strategies to create value, and it's important to, I think, try and quantify that to kind of set the stage. And Forrester actually came out with a study that really measured the idea of when a customer is engaged, then their customer experience improves. When the customer experience improves, loyalty increases, and you could actually start to quantify that from industry to industry. So they measured that correlation of increased customer experience scores and looked at how that impacted loyalty, leading to increase in repeat purchase, companies saving revenue through lower churn rate of their customers, and then new sales being driven through referral or word of mouth due to positive experience. And so if you can see this chart, you might need to blow it up to full screen to appreciate it. It really breaks it down into a lot of interesting industries. Near the top of that funnel, you can see that there are very high churn industries at the top. There's almost a commoditization that tends to happen at those levels, whether it's the airlines or credit card providers or hotels. There's a lot of options and a lot of clutter in that space. So the idea of engaging people and keeping connected to them with relevant content is going to decrease that churn and leads to significant value. So at the top of that chart, you can see we're looking at $3 billion of potential impact at wireless service levels. And that's why there's so many mechanisms in your wireless industry to keep you as a customer and to keep you engaged and have lots of touch points once you are a customer, because they know that the potential switching costs and the loss of revenue are significant if they don't do their job properly. But even at the low end of that spectrum, consumer electronics, I mean, you're still looking at a significant bottom line impact of doing these strategies properly. And then again, the other side of the success side of that is trying to mitigate risk. In today's environment, the consumer has more power than they've ever had before. They're also more easily disappointed than ever. I think that as companies improve their engagement strategies and as technologies are empowering companies to be better connected to their customers, the bar just keeps getting raised higher and higher. So if you're not keeping up with these types of trends and you're not dialing into your customer properly, then you're going to potentially disappoint them easier than ever before. So in this survey that was done, was a populist survey done in 2013, 77% of customers had seen no improvement or worsened customer relationships with businesses that they were engaged with over the past 3 years. So I think that shows an opportunity for incredible improvement, but it also shows the risks of not doing it properly, because there's more options. 25% of the people in that survey identified that they would consider switching providers after a single negative experience. And then if you also take that to the internet and to social, those customers are also much more likely to criticize publicly. So 30% of the people who have bad experiences online will share that with an average of 25 other people. So you can see the ripple effects of a poor customer engagement strategy can be quite substantial as well. And that goes hand in hand with the potential upside of doing it right and realizing some of those revenue gains. So in terms of just kind of framing that conversation further, there's a lot of different components that go into engaging your customer. In my mind, there's a few things that they really should be a given by now in business and in the organization. So I just want to cover them briefly, and these should not just be a starting point. These should already be well established in the organization, and if they're not, certainly you should look at these with a little bit more scrutiny. The idea is, one of the prerequisites should be it's a very experience-driven approach. Modern marketing is multi-channel, it's always on, it's on mobile devices, it's on the website, your brand lives on 100 touch points, some of which you might control, some of which you can't, and the sum of all of those touch points are leading to the experience a customer might have with your organization. So you need to have an organizational look at that experience and try to map it as best we can so that we can start to plan and leverage and learn from it. It also has to be driven through organizations from the top down. So without that top-down C-level support, a lot of these strategies and tactics that we're going to look at today, they're just not going to get off the ground effectively. You have to really strive to define your brand and business with that experience-driven approach, and it starts with putting the customer in the center of that viewpoint. And I like this quote from Steve Cannon, the CEO of Mercedes. He says that every customer experience is actually a moment of brand truth. So there needs to be an authenticity in brands and in these programs like never before. And as soon as you create a program that goes counter to what that brand stands for, the market tends to respond instantly. And one good example of the last couple of years is, if you can remember, a shining story of a brand that really did everything right, saw a market opportunity, and is adjusted beautifully as Netflix. But I don't know how many people remember when they had that snafu where they tried to kind of rebrand and launch the Quickster initiative, right? The stock dropped 77%. They lost 1 million customers instantly. It was so counter to the idea of this brand experience that they had been cultivating so carefully that instantly the public saw through this new kind of marketing spiel that they were putting up around Quickster. So that's an extreme example, but I think it's a poignant one where they just lost sight of the brand that they had been building, which was such a customer-centric brand. The other prerequisite is just understanding that a lot of engagement, it's about content and context. So how do we provide the right content at the right time? How do we personalize that content? Oftentimes we're trying to not just tailor but be predictive in our marketing activities. We're trying to do the best we can to fill in our data picture and figure out what that customer might be looking for and what that customer might be searching for, whether it's our product or a piece of content, things like that. We also need to make sure we're where the conversation is. So there's great listening tools out there that allow you to understand where people are having the conversations about your product that might not be on your website or in a channel that you can control. And as marketers, how can we use our engagement strategy to reach people in the areas that they're having those conversations, rather than trying to force them into the channels that we control where we would love for them to be? We often don't have that luxury. So in order to do that, the content that we're presenting to people in those other channels has to be relevant. So that's where we start to look at these as marketing-based strategies, where we're trying to reach people and draw them into the campaign a little bit. And a real key to doing all this is using data to unlock all of these insights effectively. And there's great tools and platforms now that can start to draw a more complete picture of the customer, not only where they are, but what they're talking about, when they're doing it, what devices they're on. All of these things kind of shape these campaigns down to a very granular level now. This is from that same survey, and it just, to me, hammers home the point that content and context are so very important. So, those are tiny points down below, but they almost all relate to the idea of content and context influencing the opinion of what a customer might think of an organization. And so in some cases, it's not necessarily the organization dropping the ball drastically and doing something overtly wrong. So for example, some of those is, the fifth one in is the idea of receiving excessive volumes of communication, right? That's a lot of people there that feel very, very negative by receiving a volume of communication. As marketers, we often love to communicate to our customers. So it's not about over-communicating, it's about strategically communicating, and content and context play a key role there, right? So understanding what the customer wants is key to having proper engagement with them. And then the other prerequisite, it's hard to develop an overall strategic view to customer engagement if you haven't first identified the data. And in doing that, there's typically multiple sources of data in an organization. There's data coming off of websites. There's data coming off of social media properties. There's data that's housed in CRM platforms or in other databases. So understanding, kind of mapping all of that data, finding out what data we have and also what data we maybe don't have is an important kind of prerequisite before you try to really dive into creating one of these programs. So if we understand what we don't know, we can also start to fill in the missing pieces. Maybe there's a tool that we can use that can go out and mine some of that missing data. Maybe there's some predictive technology that can help give us a best guess on filling it in. Or maybe we go back to our roots and we just get qualitative and actually draw customers into that conversation directly, and through focus groups and customer insights and surveying, we can often round out some of our data to launch some of these programs. So I think just understanding those data sources has to be a prerequisite before you actually start to strategize what to do with that data. So that being said, I tried to take those prerequisites and frame them with what I consider to be 6 tenets of a really successful customer engagement strategy. And we'll go through these one by one, but the takeaway I'd like everyone to get from each of these is, number one, why is this important? Why do we consider this tenet to be tied so tightly to a successful strategy? And then make it actionable. What can we really do in your organization to realize that tenet and to develop a more successful strategy for you? So the first one is the idea of thou shalt remove silos. And I think this is a hot topic right now in organizations, that so many of our activities have been built over time as siloed activities. This could be within a department. I know oftentimes marketing departments in large organizations, they have separate silos for the digital team, for the brand messaging team, for the PR team. Those are operating in silos, right? But as soon as you go outside of even just marketing and look beyond marketing, there's customer service is typically a separate silo from marketing. Sales is typically a separate silo. Operations is a separate silo. And the problem with having so many silos in the organization is a couple things. One is the idea that silos create a very myopic view of the organization. The silos typically have their own viewpoint of the customer, of the data that they house in that silo, of their objectives, and then oftentimes they're incentivized completely differently than other silos. So the interests of the silo often stand in the way of trying to create a truly programmatic approach. The other idea is that when you have all these silos, there's just not a lot of communication or collaboration. And successful engagement programs, they really do take that single view of the customer. How many times have people, for example, called a bank to make something happen, and you wind up having to literally explain your story and give them your account number several different times in that phone call as you're shuffled around the organization. So that idea that there really wasn't one single view of everything that was happening, it just leads to a negative customer experience with a brand when something like that happens. So, what can you do in your organization to break this down? I think this chart that comes from a Teradata report, I actually reference this chart quite often. There's lots of approaches to break down silos. We want to replace competition and create collaboration, right? So there's lots of ways to do that. In a small organization, it's easy to tie people together tightly. In a larger organization, it might be about creating some sort of a tiger team or some sort of a program approach to fostering this in your environment. So for example, at Nestle, they have the Center of Excellence, and the Center of Excellence is employees from all the different disciplines from lots of different countries across the Nestle company, all working together to bring engagement and marketing initiatives across the company to light. You can do that on the training level as well. So Unilever has their Unilever Marketing Academy, for example, where they have over 150 courses that are designed to consistently train people in the same style and to consistently hammer home unified brand points and messaging so that everyone in the organization, regardless of what silo they live in, can speak to the brand and have that single view of the customer. You might create the idea of a special tiger team around customer engagement summit or something along those lines, where everyone in the organization comes together specifically to evangelize these types of programs. And the second tenet is we've already identified all the data, but so oftentimes people are really not leveraging the true power of that data. They might leverage it in the trenches for their individual role of what they have to do. Sales team might use CRM very well, but isn't necessarily talking to marketing about how to leverage the data coming off of the marketing automation system to drive better leads. So, understanding and leveraging the data is key to that, because data really is power. So you have to develop a plan first and foremost to, once you've identified all the sources, how do you integrate them into a single source so that you can run reports off that data that really makes sense, and you're not trying to run separate reports and then cram those reports together. And this is, again, where technology and platform-based solutions can really play a key role. The other thing is just keeping databases current. It's very important. A lot of times different databases from different sources are just out of date, or they're lagging behind in the technology and they can't talk to each other properly. So I think having that as part of your evaluation strategy is key. And then that last point, especially in today's society, we have to create trust through transparency and security of our data. I think it's in the media all the time right now, whether it's a data breach at Home Depot or Target, right? Everything and all the good brand work that those brands are doing can be undermined very quickly with some sort of security breach. So doing the best we can to prevent that from happening, having risk mitigation plans in place to deal with it if it does happen, those are all part and parcel of doing business in today's kind of inter-networked, data-driven society. Another way to kind of mitigate that risk might be to create like a real-time listening center. So a lot of our social media clients now that we're advising on the social media front, not only are we running campaigns, but we're really trying to get them to understand that this needs to be a real-time form of marketing, and the only way that that's effective is to create a command center that's a real-time listening center. And you see that more and more now in modern marketing, all of the real-time responses, especially around large events, whether it's something happening at the Super Bowl, something happening during the Oscars. Those are the ones that kind of make the media attention, but it's just as relevant from a customer service standpoint. So for example, we worked with Nike, and they've actually implemented social media as a customer service channel where a couple of their products steer all customer service inquiries around specific hashtags, and then they have a customer service team monitoring and listening to those hashtags in real time in 10 different languages and responding via social to customer service problems. Again, you're able to put that content right in the immediate context, deal with it in the channel that the people want to have the conversation on, and it's a very effective way to make that customer feel engaged as part of your business. Tenet 3 is service thy customer. So a lot of the customer engagement strategies, the starting point is really customer service. And I think customer service is something that's always been around organizations. It's always been a part of organizations. But I think understanding that in the context of a marketing program is where people are starting to integrate these two disciplines a little bit. So certainly it's the logical point for engagement, and it also is the place of biggest risk. So if we know that people are coming into customer service typically already with a problem in hand, if we don't field that problem effectively at that moment in time, the risk of them turning to social media and talking about what a bad experience they had right then and there is very great. So I think there's huge risk if you don't do it well. And it's very much, again, it needs to be embedded in the DNA of a company. So for example, Zappos is a brand that comes to mind as kind of a best-in-breed customer service organization. And that's very much by design. So for example, a lot of organizations, again, goes back to the idea of having a long tail view of this. A lot of organizations, their customer service departments have call monitoring because the organization wants to understand how much time is it taking for a customer service agent to deal with an issue, and certainly from a capacity and efficiency standpoint, the more issues that can be dealt with in a shorter amount of time seems to make sense, right? But Zappos kind of flipped that on its head a little bit. So they actually did away with call time tracking and actually encouraged customer service agents to spend more time on the phone with customers and to really get to the root of the problem and to try and document data that they can get from those calls along the way into the customer profile. And so by doing that and de-incentivizing people to just churn and burn through these problems, it contributes to that culture of superior customer service. The other idea is it doesn't have to be online. You can kind of delight with your customer service in unexpected ways. So I travel a lot for business, for example, and LAX not too long ago, which in my opinion was one of the worst airports that I had to deal with in my traveling. I always tried to book to Orange County or to one of the other airports, but it's such a big hub, you wind up going through there inevitably. They've been really working on customer service in airport. So for example, one of their initiatives was to drop all the fees for baggage carts. Just a simple thing like that, and then promoting it really makes a huge impact in your experience that you're having on the ground in that airport, which oftentimes is a stressful experience at its core if you're trying to move heavy luggage around, make a flight on time, things of that nature. So there's lots of ways to factor in both offline and online into an engagement strategy, and satisfying the customer and servicing them effectively is a great starting point to look at. So number 4 is the idea of turn the insights into action. So we can only develop programmatic approaches if we have clear measurement and we have clear goals of what we want to accomplish. So that's a starting point here, is we can tie all these tactics together as long as there's a goal of our engagement program. That might be to generate more engagement on social media. It might be to ultimately generate more repeat purchase and increase loyalty. There could be a number of different mechanisms for measuring this, and we can look at a few of those. But ultimately, it's about determining that purpose and goals and then prioritizing them. A lot of engagement programs are well-intentioned and they can't necessarily do everything at once. So taking a kind of walk before we run approach to developing these programs allows us to get some of these early wins, leverage that goodwill throughout an organization, and start to build on these programs. And then ultimately where we want to get to is to develop multi-layered, multi-channel programs that communicate clear value and can be, again, interacted with by the consumer. So if we're not engaging the consumer and pulling them into these programs, we're not truly creating engagement. And that can be within the organization, that can be outside of the organization. There's great examples, for example, loyalty programs from an air mileage standpoint are a classic example of something that is a very actionable engagement mechanism for a lot of different businesses. You're earning points and you're able to then engage people who have these points and allow them to apply them in different ways. Season ticket holders programs for sports teams, another great example of really trying to tap into the main customers of that brand and make them feel special, almost a VIP approach. But you can also take that out as a marketing program. So for example, when we worked with the Portland Timbers, who were launching a team into the Major League Soccer arena, the whole campaign revolved around We Are Timbers, and it started by how do we fold the customer into this so that they can engage? How do we shine a spotlight on them? So we actually set up a photo shoot to happen in downtown Portland where people could come in and interact with axes and chainsaws and some of these props that were tied to the Timbers identity, and get a great family photo taken that was an immediate touch point that they could take away and put on their mantelpiece. But then we took those photos and we actually extended them into a display that was at the stadium level. So a huge montage of all these photos saying We Are Timbers, that's up there for everyone to pass by, bring guests to the game, point to their picture, show them that they're up on the wall. Then that was taken out to the advertising level, and some of those photos were actually put up on billboards or put into a promotion where people could go on Facebook and vote for who they wanted to see on the billboard. So all of a sudden this core tenet of the advertising and communication strategy is now embodied in a very tight engagement strategy on a lot of different levels that touch email, that touch social, that touch out of home, that touch in stadium, experiential, all of these multi-channel programs all communicating that same key touch point of involving the customer, making them an important part of who this team was at launch. So tenet 5 is thou shalt optimize thy program. So it's not a let's set it in motion and let it run type of thing. Again, we want to leverage the power of the data that we're gathering, and we want to use that data to make these programs better. So for example, it starts with determining what you want to measure and how you want to measure it as these programs are rolling out. And there's lots of different metrics that we can look at in terms of measuring things depending on what you want to do. And I've already seen a few questions are all geared around that. What should we measure? Things like that. So for example, on a website, measurements of engagement might include the duration of visit. How long were they on our website? How long did they engage with the content we wanted to see? If they came through a landing page, how long were they there? The frequency of those visits. Did we engage people in a campaign that brought them back to our site over and over again? Was it directly through a bookmark, or was it through other touch points of the campaign? right? How recently were they engaged? Is it something they came to once when the campaign launched? Were we able to get them back in a more relevant time frame? The depth of their visit. How much of our site did they really go through? Over time, we also want to measure real-world things. We want to measure sales. We want to measure lifetime value. So not just what was the average purchase that person made when they came to our site, but what's the lifetime value we're truly mining from that customer through successful engagement. On social, there's all kinds of measurements as well. The amount of time you're spending on social, the ratio of comments and likes and posts to trackbacks, the amount of time that you're engaged. There's all kinds of different metrics you could potentially look at from channel to channel and from data source to data source. But again, understanding what is important to the success of your engagement program and then putting a plan to measure it and optimize it is very important. Another important part is to really identify the influencers and evangelists. In any successful program, you're going to have your kind of high use, high involvement customers that are ideal. They're engaging your brand every way that you'd like them to frequently. They're your best opportunity to not just pull them into the campaign and gain success from that, but to really turn them and amplify their reach into their peer groups and into their friends by pulling them into the campaign tightly. So a lot of the engagement strategies that we're using, again, you're purposely trying to identify who these high use individuals are or who the potential influencers are that might not be engaged, and reaching out to them directly to try and pull them in is a key important part of any kind of strategy. And then again, we want data to drive decision making, but in my opinion, there's a little art and science to this. So I don't think that successful marketers are going to be replaced by full automation robots anytime soon, because there's a human component there that I think the most successful marketers, they have the gut instincts to see beyond the data and to test and validate assumptions that maybe weren't readily apparent in that data. So by doing that, you can balance some of the short and long-term views of these programs. And again, try to map it back to the customer journey. The journey nowadays goes over many channels. It includes mobile. And a lot of times that can be difficult to track if you're not in tune with how did they take one part of our campaign and then now they're on their mobile device. How did that campaign change for them? So again, I think technology has come a long way to being able to help fill in some of those missing pieces and to really integrate things from a lot tighter lens. There's a lot of ways that you can do this, again, in your organization. The influencer thing is a key piece. So, for example, J.Crew is a very dialed-in brand on social media. They identify who their evangelists and heavy users are, and they do special programs for them. So they might give them a first look at a new product, or they might pull them into almost a beta launch of that product and get their opinions onto the table sooner. We just did a program for a company called Mozo Shoes, and they make shoes for the culinary industry. And so they're going around to lots of different food events. So before we get to those events, we want to reach out to the influencers in those local markets. We want to get the product in their hands. We want to get their testimony, their candid views of that product into the social channels, and all of a sudden you see engagement spike throughout the entire campaign. And then we want to follow through with those partners at the end of the campaign, again, with some sort of partnership program to make them feel special for participating. Maybe it's offering everyone that works at their restaurants, all of the staff, a group discount, something along those lines to, again, create even more engagement with the brand at the product level, at the marketing level, at the social level. So it's a very programmatic approach that we can then roll out and replicate at multiple events, multiple geographies, tie all that data back to site metrics, look at social referrals, look at ultimately at pass-through sales. All of those metrics working in tandem feed and inform the program and help us tweak things even on the ground if we have a piece of collateral that's needed or missing. So for example, we identified a tattoo maybe being an important touch point, and we created a branded tattoo that we could put on people at these events. All of a sudden engagement spiked because people were able to now talk and take photos of the tattoo, and it just created another element of the product that wasn't there on the surface. So again, data helps us inform that, and monitoring these things is of huge importance. So the last tenet is the idea that we're really focused on the customer, but these same engagement strategies can be extended both into the organization and outward. So organizations that really embrace customer engagement really embrace engagement as a whole. So that same concept can be taken to your employees. Customers are typically a starting point because they drive the most bottom line easy to track revenue. They become the champions that sell these programs throughout the organization very easily. But turning inside an organization is equally as important. A lot of the people on the front lines of a brand are within an organization. They're the stakeholders. And there's been plenty of studies that show as employees feel engaged to an organization, they feel more satisfaction and loyalty. And then the same thing, they turn over much less frequently. And everyone knows that the cost associated with employee turnover can be quite substantial. So anything we can do from a programmatic approach to make an employee feel connected to our brand, we can involve them in brand discussions. If there's a rebrand happening, have, again, a team from all of the disciplines within the organization contributing to that rebrand process is an important part of the DNA of an organization that embraces engagement, as opposed to having your outside agency just come in and rebrand you and dictate what you look like. As an outside agency that does that, we always try to pull people from inside the organization into our process wherever possible. You can take those same strategies and kind of bring them outward to prospects. Again, a lot of times people are engaging with the brand and have never even done business with the brand. I can tell you that my parents, for example, have never owned an Apple product, have never had an iPad or an iPhone. They probably wouldn't know what to do with it. But if you ask them about what they think about Apple, they'll communicate very specific ideas about what they feel that company is and stands for, the quality of their products. They're able to communicate that very, very effectively, and it's a credit to the values of the brand and the engagement that Apple has created over the years, that someone who's never even owned a product has a pretty clear sense and a pretty accurate sense about what it might be like to own those products. So again, if we can take that out to our marketing, we can do it in very effective ways. And a lot of these initiatives tend to start at the consumer level, but they certainly carry over to the B2B market. And in my mind, probably the best benchmark that I use is Red Bull, in terms of a company that really got the idea of engagement early. They really understood early on how to digitally engage people with their brand, and then they started to flip those strategies back into the real world. And if you look at their website that I have up there off to the side, I mean, it's very much a publisher's view of a brand, and they've taken it way beyond just reporting information out that their customers and their evangelists might be interested in. They're actually creating events. They're creating whole racetracks that embody their brand, whole environments. They're creating tour series and capturing all kinds of content, and they're staying ahead of cutting-edge areas of content. So they have a whole e-gaming division now that embeds that brand into that up-and-coming space. And they're pushing out all kinds of very rich, engaging content. And if you take a step back, that really doesn't have anything to do with selling energy drinks. But it's the idea of connecting and knowing their audience and aligning their brand with that audience so tightly from an engagement standpoint that you create such a huge amount of loyalty and engagement that people wouldn't think to go over to a different brand because of it. So again, I think that's a great example of really combining digital and the real world in a lot of really innovative ways that surprise and delight the customer and ultimately feed back to the engagement programs and monitoring metrics that you're trying to track so that you can optimize those programs. So just to kind of sum up the presentation, I know we covered a lot. Probably any one of those areas could have been a 30, 40-minute presentation of its own. I just wanted to try and give you an actionable slide about how to move things over. So if you have a program, great. If you don't have a program, to me, the first starting point is go out, get C-suite buy-in and support. Really need to sell this at the top level down, because it really takes so many different areas of the organization coming together and working together that without that top-down support, these programs just won't get off the ground effectively. Once you have that support from the top, then you go broad and you want to create these cross-departmental, some sort of engagement team to really identify all the data sources, figure out how to pull them into a single area, to start to develop the tactics and strategy that align with the brand. What makes sense for this brand might not make sense for another brand. It should feel unique to your company, but it should still satisfy the goals and the strategies that you're putting forward as part of the program. Then we want to map that data aggregation plan to the customer journey and understand how do we align those things. A modern way of kind of staffing and seating in organizations is no longer to silo marketing over here and sales over here. It's to really map the customer journey and try to cross-functionally staff departments that map to that journey. So sales and customer service are often very intertwined, because if there's a problem with what was just sold, customer service is going to hear about it first. So letting those people kind of sit together and breathe air together is a real effective way to kind of gain this synergy that's needed to take a single customer viewpoint in an organization and make sure that the different departments are really truly supporting each other, and they're not just going after their own siloed goals. And then once we have all that together, it's the programs and campaigns that really are the touch points here. So anything that we can do to be creative, to be unexpected, to pull people into the program, that's going to be more successful. How can we let maybe the product, the customers become the model for our product? We have a promotion that we ask them to take a photo of themselves wearing our product or using our product, and we feed that into a bigger campaign. Or maybe we write about their stories and we let the communications be from their point of view. There's lots of ways to really personalize things and gain context. And then marketing platforms are wonderful to adding very specific personalized content. I think we're all have experienced maybe going and visiting a site, learning about a trip to go somewhere, and then the rest of the next couple weeks, wherever you go on the web, content is being served up to you that highlights that destination you were just looking at, and is trying to incentivize you to really create a vacation there. The travel industry is one industry that got ahead of this curve very, very early on, because what they do is so personalized that serving up the right content and context is key to their success. And then again, once we've mapped this out, start to look at ways to bring that strategy both outward to prospects that don't know your business yet, and inward, really focusing on the employees and the stakeholders of the business, pulling them in through partnership programs, employee training, things of that nature. So that really sums up where my point of view is coming from. I was very excited to learn that Teradata was going to be involved, and so I think they're one of many great examples of a platform that kind of gets this and can really tie it all together. And in today's marketing landscape, you really need a tool set like that to really empower these programs. So that being said, I'm excited to introduce Mark Schroeder, who's kind of co-presenting with me today. He's the marketing director from Teradata, and I know he has a lot of great content to kind of add to the context of my presentation.
Well, thank you, Christian. I really appreciate it, and great content around customer engagement. I think there's a lot for everybody to take and learn and implement into their own business. And Christian's right. Absolutely, for Teradata, customer engagement is our core mission, to provide companies with the ability and the platform to really deliver a best-in-class customer experience for their customers and prospects. So there's a lot of great rewards, as Christian was saying, a lot of great rewards for delivering a customer experience, and as well as a demand now from the consumers that they are expecting this customer experience and relevancy at every point of engagement. And with those great rewards, there are some risks, and the risks are because there is so many channels and there's so much data, and it's important to really get it right. And so the question is what is a modern marketer to do right now? And the key thing is to dig deeper, fill in the gaps, uncover the insights, use every bit of data your customer has provided to create this new, exciting, and meaningful interaction with him or her every time. And data-driven marketing, from what Teradata's point of view, is about integrating your customer data, drawing on insights to power interactions with your customers, and increasing your marketing and agility. So there's no doubt about it that data-driven marketing is becoming more and more essential for success. Successful marketing teams are partnering with IT to use, leverage, and apply the actionable insights derived from data. Together, they're helping their companies become data-driven businesses, and business that can effectively and efficiently use data from customers and prospects and from warehouses, whether it be location data or sensor data, competitive data, partner data, internal and external data, structured or unstructured data, all of that, and take all of that information, they're able to rise to the challenge in extracting insights that matter and act on them in real time. And since those businesses can do it, so can everybody else. And the way that you can do this is by integrating kind of the best-of-breed solutions, including marketing operations with campaign management and digital messaging, and bringing all this together to deliver customer insights with embedded predictive analytics into this robust marketing platform. And then once you have that, only then will you have the tools to delight customers across all your channels and platforms, online and offline, and deliver and create a rock-solid foundation for this data-driven marketing. And return on investment will be built on a hard business case. So the core thing is about placing the customer at the center of your marketing view. With this, you're able to kind of manage their marketing more effectively and efficiently. With this, Teradata provides us with our comprehensive and robust solution portfolio. We provide this to address that breadth of requirements to develop and execute on a data-driven marketing strategy. Data-driven marketing in action means you have the data you need to know more about your marketing, your customers, and your business, and have the flexibility to do more with that data at any given point. We offer at Teradata, we have an integrated marketing cloud that enables data-driven marketing by providing that insight into customer interactions, and which increases marketing agility and efficiency, and empowers marketers to generate greater revenue, be the architect to generate and design and implement better experiences, and develop and by thus increasing the value to customers with every interaction that they are having with your brand. And by managing your marketing effectively and efficiently across channels, borders, and time zones, wherever, whenever, and with whomever is needed to get done. And customers, and the key thing to understand is that customers are always on, and so your marketing, everybody's marketing needs to keep up with that 24/7 customer. One of the things that we talk about, and I'm going to kind of talk about 3 case studies that we have, and I'll try to get through them as fast as I can. But one is about how an example of a company that was harnessing the power of their vast amount of data, and that's with a company called Procter & Gamble. Marketing used to be easy for Procter & Gamble. It was as simple as television commercials. But unfortunately, in the current business environment, marketing is all about digital channels. And because of this, there is so much more competition for consumers' eyes and loyalty. And the company used to put the leftover money from TV commercials into the digital space. But now in today's environment, now that digital space is extremely important. And so TV spots must bring customers back to digital channels and vice versa. And they realized that one channel impacts all other channels, and they wanted to leverage this to achieve that higher engagement. And so they dealt with challenges, and however, there is a risk with high level of engagement for the consumer, because the consumer also wants privacy. So what does it take to get a consumer over that barrier of trust? And Procter & Gamble believed that they must respect the consumer's wishes, and they used the logic they chose was an opt-in marketing. And Procter & Gamble, with understanding that CRM space was changing, they saw a whole new business model in this digital space, which made them rethink their approach. And what they ended up doing is that using Teradata's CRM solution in combination with the enterprise data warehouse, Procter & Gamble brought all of their data together around the customer. They made it a rule that consumers had to opt in to Procter & Gamble before the company could begin any type of communication. And once they had this opt-in, Procter & Gamble was able to gather how consumers interact with brands, to rate their products, interact with other consumers, and this enabled the company to deliver a personalized content, use triggers as a purchase, or leverage loyalty rewards through the customer interaction manager that Teradata provide. And so specifically within SIM, P&G, Procter & Gamble used communication rules, affinity analysis, behavioral trend analysis, and cross-segment analysis and pattern detection to really drive those levels of customer engagement in the marketing messages. And as a result, Procter & Gamble was able to create this more personalized and effective consumer experience. and they were able to construct specific brand initiatives that followed consumers through specific stages of life cycle needs. And Procter & Gamble has many brands and many channels, and so Teradata was able to capture all of that consumer transaction and help Procter & Gamble understand how they were winning with the consumer and how they weren't. And they could leverage successful campaigns within other brands and other industries. Other things that we also have, and I'm going to kind of skip the next case study, but you'll get this in our slides, but it is with American Red Cross, and I'm going to jump into another one that we have around customer interactions, and this is with MGM Resorts. With MGM Resorts International, they kind of develop, build, and operate unique destination resorts that are designed to provide the ultimate guest experience. And they are the second largest gaming company in the world, and MGM owns and operates about 15 properties in the United States with innumerable customer touch points. So because of this, the survival of MGM's business relies on providing relevant and timely offers that help turn one-time guests into loyal customers. So their first step is in replicating and reusing an existing campaign was to develop an organization in project workflow that mapped out all of the individual components of the MGM Resorts organization. And with this workflow, they would minimize the use of resources and increase marketing efficiency. And the management of that project is headed by corporate marketing that allows them to streamline work and prevent duplicate efforts across the organization. And with this, because of utilizing Teradata Campaign Management and digital messaging, it designed that guest interaction and build campaign steps and execute real-time interactions through digital communications. They were able to develop relevant and personalized messages and offers like room upgrades to the guests that were communicated right at the optimal time before they stay at one of the MGM's resorts. So this is kind of some of the core things that companies are able to do and need to do to really win in today's marketplace. And right now, customers want an experience that kind of carries through all the touch points. At this point, there's a research from Avaya about that 68% of consumers expect the information they give an organization in one place, example for it be through a website or at a call center, to be available, to be captured and be available when they interact with another channel. So that's one of the core components that organizations need to really think about when they are developing that ultimate customer experience. We also at Teradata, we did a data-driven marketing survey, and one of the things that we found in there that was about nearly 75% of marketers were planning to implement a big data solution to deepen insights in the next 2 years. And with this, with data-driven marketing, it's to provide insights that would lead to business opportunities. But with those business opportunities, what they were doing was pulling marketing and IT together. And those two organizations in a company are being pulled together by the potential for stronger revenue, higher profit margins, stronger customer retention, and an improvement on return on marketing investment. And with those goals in mind, for those organizations, for a marketing organization to really focus and be able to achieve those goals, they have to work with IT to improve that customer engagement. And from our research, we understand that companies are not there yet. The vast majority, based off of our research this past year, was that 75% of them are still not as working as tightly or as view IT as strategic partners at this point. So where do companies go? And right now, we need marketers. Marketers are the architects of the experience. And they need to kind of develop and create new and compelling customer experiences. And to do that, they need to be able to strike up the conversations, solicit and act on real-time customer feedback, no matter what the channel, and build emotional relationships with their customers, their target audience, and be able to deliver a message that is personalized, just in time, and relevant. So bringing that content and context at every point of interaction with a customer or with a prospect. And by doing this, the only way, so to do this for companies will be able to win is by developing this ultimate optimized customer experience. And so that's what Teradata is focused on, providing the platform for marketers to be able to implement what I've talked about, as well as what Christian has talked about in today's call on how to deliver that customer experience. I appreciate the time, and I know we want to open it up for Q&A for either Christian or myself. So I'm going to hand this back to Anthony.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Mark. And Christian, thank you as well for all the information that you shared earlier. We do have a number of questions lined up for you. We've got a couple of minutes still to go here, so we're going to take that time to get it to as many as we can. But if you do still have a question for either Mark or Christian, use that chat area in the lower left corner of your screen and get your question in there. So Christian, a couple of questions here for you to start with. This one first coming in from Connie. And she's asking if you could recommend the type of data, maybe the top 3, that are necessary to lobby for C-suite support. I know you kind of touched on that a little bit at the end there, but maybe you could give a little bit more detail for her there.
Certainly. Yeah, that's a great question, because that's definitely one of the action items. If you don't have these programs, getting that support is critical. If I'm talking at the C-level, to me, how I try to frame the data to gain that support is with a kind of a short view, medium view, long view, if you will, because I think the C-level is probably the office that's most in tune with those 3 areas of growth and strategy of an organization. And if you don't cover all of them, that's going to be the first hole they see in your proposal. So in terms of looking at short term, to me it's very actionable things that show that there's short-term potential in lining up programs like this. So I would look at the increase of engagement on these channels, whether we're looking at social, whether we're looking at email response rates, like very specific increases in engagement with a program, increases in terms of posts and responses and comments on social, email response rates, things like that, and tie that to leads. So again, short-term view, we're going to increase leads for the organization. We're going to monitor these other data touch points, and we're going to feed them into understanding if, for example, how increase in engagement on social leads to an increase in leads and social referral traffic coming to the pages on our website. Right? I'm going to tie one metric to a lead metric, because that's, I think, driving all organizations right now. For the medium-term view, the kinds of data I would look at is trying to improve loyalty, trying to improve repeat use or purchase, right? So not just we brought in more leads, but we actually increased how often these leads were engaging us and purchasing our product, and we had touch points of the program that specifically address that. And then that long-term view, to me, it all comes down to a lifetime value of a customer. If you have lower churn rates and you are increasing the lifetime value through these programs, you can do some data analysis that shows, that's kind of that early slide I had that showed the potential annual impact. That was a sum of lots of different areas that really got back to the idea of lifetime value for an organization. So again, if you can frame the conversation and kind of look, if we do this, here's the short-term immediate win stuff, here's where we're headed with it, and then over the long term, this is the success we'll see, I think that's the best way to get buy-in.
All right, excellent. And unfortunately, we are running a little short on time here, but I'm going to give you one more question here before we do close. This one coming in from Mohammed. And his question is, how do you distinguish between the amount of engagement that you're providing? Is what is too little and what is too much? Any kind of techniques or thoughts that you can share on how to really kind of distinguish and measure that?
Sure. I think that's where the art and science of this meet up a little bit. There's definitely no one size fits all, we want 9 touch points per consumer in the course of a month type of formula. So I think it's really, again, understanding the data and looking at this as a programmatic approach. So you should start to see, lack of improvement in your results if you're starting to over-engage. And I had that chart earlier that showed that was something that customers were definitely in touch with. If they were over-communicated to, if there was too many things coming at them, or if they felt that the communication was almost too personal, like if you cross the line and it becomes almost an intrusion in your privacy, you've gone too far. So there's not necessarily one red flag to look out for, but I think as marketers we have to really have that gut instinct and understand our customer really well. We can certainly fold them into the process and have focus group testing and things like that where we're hearing directly from our customers and vetting things from a programmatic standpoint. And then we also balance that with a data view. We can see when we've kind of started to overstep our bounds because the data will start to reflect that.
Very good. Thank you so much, Christian. Appreciate that. And like I said, unfortunately, that does take us to the scheduled end time for the webcast, so we're going to have to wind it up. But I do want to thank both you and Mark for all of the time you put into putting this together for us and for sharing this hour with us. Thank you both for being here. And just a quick reminder to everyone as we do wind up today's webcast. As mentioned earlier, we are going to be sharing a recording link with you of the full webcast, so look for that coming your way soon. And to those of you that were able to join us today on Twitter, we definitely appreciate your participation there. And if you were not able to join us, you can still go and engage in that conversation later. Again, the hashtag for today was #engagement. So I'd like to close by thanking Teradata for sponsoring this webcast, as well as ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we used. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. And of course, I want to thank you, the audience, for sharing an hour from your day with us. We hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon on another AMA Thought Leader webcast. That does end our presentation for today. Thank you again for joining, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.